Hello, Sir Rudy. How are you doing today? My local police station just had a break-in last night. All the toilets were stolen. Police say they had nothing to go on. Are you even laughing? Good morning, everyone. How you all doing? It is Friday, the 15th of July. It is the 5th. It's 12 degrees. I think it's going to get a bit warm today, reaching a top of 21. $1.88.9 per every litre. If this is your first time here, don't forget you need to hit that share button or like that smash button, I think it's called. Something like that. And you all know this, if I'm not on at every single day at 9 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, every single day, if I'm not on, I am not on. Oh, I'm very excited today. I've got a very special guest here today, and I want to introduce you to Inspector Corey Allen. Corey, how are you doing here today?
Hey, good morning, mate. Yeah, really excited to be here. This is interesting.
This is a bit interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, you know when we have barbecues and you go out, say for example, if you go to a barbecue and there's a guy out there and he says, oh, mate, I'm a doctor. And you go, oh, my knee's really sore. And the guy says, I'm an accountant. And you go, oh, look, I've got my tax to do. With yourself, does anyone ever come up to you and go, oh, mate, I've got a ticket. I need you to fix this up?
Yeah, they ask a lot of good questions. And I kind of like that anyway, because I think at least they might meet a copper when they're not in trouble.
Yeah.
So it's nice to ask those questions when you think I'm not standing on the side of the road and, you know, I've got a bit of time to spend with someone. So I actually don't mind it, but sometimes it is pretty predictable.
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of tickets here that I want you to look after. If
yeah,
you
no
mind.
worries. I can just drop my name, mate. You'll probably get the fine doubled.
Oh, dropping names. That's always good to do, isn't it?
Yes.
Hey, I always think about, you know, when people go into specific careers, like you took up policing. I mean, you might have done it because, and I'm just guessing here, it might be in your DNA. You know, it might be because of trauma that you've had in the past. It might be because, I don't know, it's something that you always want to do, you know, catch the crooks. That's the thing, I think. Why did you want to join the police?
At the start, it was pretty basic. I was in a shitty spot, to be honest. I was virtually homeless. I'd been sleeping in parks and I'd been camping at friends' places. I was sleeping on the floor of a little unit that I managed to rent, and I really just wanted a roof over my head and a job that paid well. And I found being in uniform appealing because I was a young prospective army officer that didn't go too well. So I didn't start out with any altruistic motive saying I'm going to save the world or I've experienced this trauma, I'm going to do something about it. I really was just satisfying those basic needs. It wasn't until I actually got into the police I realised that I really enjoyed doing the exciting adrenaline-based stuff. I went to Brisbane Mobile Patrols, which was like the rapid response groups of those days, and I just wanted to be involved. It was fantastic. You're out there every night doing things, you know, driving to things quickly and getting there, and sometimes helping people, sometimes helping people who didn't want to be helped too. And it was just awesome fun at the start of it.
Yeah, I think when you say awesome fun at the start of it, I mean, what are the rankings? Let me see if I've got this right. The rankings are, you start off as a constable, and then, I don't know, how long did it take before you got your 2 stripes when you were a senior constable?
Oh, when I was there, you had to do what we called your arts and farts course at TAFE College, an arts and sciences course, which was actually a really good thing. It was a way of making you do some study. Then you did a little course and got 1 stripe, and I was a few months away from putting my 1 stripe on at 4 years when they changed the system and said, oh, we're just going to have 2 stripes now for senior constable. So now at about 6 years you can become a senior constable, depending on if you do your study and the other things to prepare you for it.
So there's senior constable, then you go sergeant, senior sergeant, and then there's inspector.
Then inspector,
and then after that you've got superintendent, then
chief superintendent, assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner. There's a stack of them. We've got heaps of deputy commissioners.
So are you closer to commissioner than what you are constable?
I'm kind of like the constable of the commissioned officers.
Okay.
It's like you go from being the senior sergeant in charge of a big station to the inspector who's at the bottom of the pecking rung of the commissioned officers. And it's my favourite job. I love it. I'm the district inspector for this area now, and you know, I feel responsible for everything that happens here, and I'm comfortable with that, so I like it.
Because what ranking were you when were you officer in charge in Brisbane City?
Brisbane City. Yeah, that's the senior sergeant. It's the largest station in Queensland. There's about 150 people there all up. Takes in Spring Hill, Red Hill, Kelvin Grove, Paddington, Milton, and obviously the CBD itself. But, you know, when you think about what's in the CBD, there's the Parliament House, Suncorp Stadium, where good things happen this week. all those other. I know people from Sydney are watching your show, but you've got to give us a couple when we're in Queensland. All the protests and other things that happen in the city, it's a really interesting place. It just matched my personality because it was so busy. It kept me occupied, I suppose.
Now, you mentioned something about being homeless. That obviously, did that help you within your policing when you were at Brisbane?
Well, I didn't really consider myself homeless. I just thought I was an idiot because I threw away a career in the army to follow my heart. I was in love with a girl and it lasted 2 weeks. Come back to Brisbane, I was embarrassed about what I'd done. My sister helped me out for a little while at her place, but I wore out my welcome and I ended up in a park and underneath friends' houses and in an abandoned car for a while, and then I saved up enough money for a little flat at Yeronga and slept on the floor. So I didn't really know what homelessness was then, but it wasn't until I was in the city and we were having so much conflict and so much interaction with homeless people that I realised that, holy shit, that could have been me. I particularly met a couple of ex-serving people who, had seen a lot more service and active service than I do, and I immediately felt this connection to think, oh, I dodged a bullet. There were a couple of key things that happened to me to help me not end up on the street for good, but these people didn't have those key things or key people. So
who's Doug?
Doug was a cranky bugger, I'll give him that. He sat in a wheelchair across the road from the Adelaide Street Police Beat. He'd been there for about 11 years when I took over the city, and just in passing, as we were getting to know what the police were doing and thinking about homelessness themselves, because we were getting a bad rap. Police were really frustrated with they had no one to help us house people or look after people. There were a lot of people that had a little website or had a service that worked 8 to 4, but at 3 o'clock in the morning when a homeless person was having huge dramas and there was no one coming out helping us, so we were really just arresting people for drunk and putting them in the watch house for 4 hours. They'd get a feed and they'd be safe, and there was this old school approach to it. But as we got to know the homeless people around Brisbane, right across from the mall post was this bloke called Doug in his wheelchair and in the bus stop, and when I asked the troops what they knew about him, everyone just sort of knew him as Doug. They didn't know that much at all, and I was a bit surprised.
Brushed him off.
Yeah, that nobody knew what his story was because he'd been there 11 years. And I didn't lose my cool, but I did say at one point, if that was a person sleeping outside a police station in a country town, you would get your ass kicked for not knowing everything about that person. So I just walked over and sat down next to him, which freaked him out. He was like, well, have I done something wrong? Am I in trouble? I said, no, I'm the new bloke. I'm the senior sergeant in charge. I just thought I'd come and say hello. Apparently you've been here for a long time and everybody knows you, but you get away with that new guy routine for a while. And he told me a little bit about his life and how he sleeps, in between dumpsters at the back of a laneway at night time. And if it's really hot during the day, he went to the library and got in the air conditioning there, and they let him tuck away in a corner and have a nap there without annoying anyone. And I just found it very odd that he had this story that we didn't know. So I asked him to do a little experiment with me, and I said, gave him my card, and I explained who I was, and I said, let's just pretend you're my uncle for a while. He goes, what do you mean? I said, if you were my uncle, I'd be doing something about it. I said, so let's just pretend you're my uncle, and that's why I'm talking to you. I said, but when the cops talk to you, I said, just mention that your nephew is now the officer in charge here, and you're connected. And bloody hell, he got pretty good service from the police for the next couple of weeks.
Incredible.
Oh, yeah, they were like, I didn't know you. Oh, that's terrible. You got a family member out there. And I did come good eventually and say, well, listen, I do have a lot of uncles and aunties, but he's not one of them, but he is someone's uncle.
Yeah,
and
totally.
their perspective changed quite a lot when they thought, here's a guy that related to someone that I know, particularly someone in a position who could affect their lives. So I think that was part of the start of the turning the culture towards, maybe if we just knew more about people and had a conversation with them when they weren't in crisis, when they weren't having a shitty day, and we asked them some questions about themselves instead of telling them what to do and asking for their name, maybe we would then unlock a few keys to helping improve their life or influencing behaviour or, all that sort of stuff.
That's totally what I want to talk to you about today is that, we'll get into that. I think that fighting crime with empathy, I think that's something that I think is really important. But before I get into that, there's something pressing in my mind. It's that you nearly didn't make it into the police.
No.
Do you still wear thick socks?
No, there's lots of people of my stature, I'll put it that way, and I encourage short people to join. But I did a talk at International Women's Day once, and I said, I don't know what you women are worried about. I'm part of the most discriminated group in the QPS. I said, they wouldn't even let short people in at all at one point. Didn't matter what gender you were. Because did all my testing to get into the police. It was a full day of testing, and the last thing they did was measure you, and I was 1 centimetre too short. Oh. So I was...
So what is it, 171?
172 on the day. I said, what's that, 5'7.5" in the old scale? And I was really cranky and sulked for a week or so. But one of my mates said... well, you should go and see our local doctor. He does acupuncture and stuff. He could relax you or something. And when I did see him, he said, just get measured first thing in the morning. He said, because your spine decompresses and, you're a little bit taller. So I didn't leave it to chance. I did those inversion boot things and hung upside down on the clothesline. And a good mate of mine who had saved me from homelessness by taking me to the gym and doing that sort of stuff, he helped me as well. And after 2 weeks, I lay down in the back of his car early one morning, so I didn't compress down and shrink the 1 centimetre. We drove into police headquarters, and I may have had 3 thick pairs of socks on because it was a cold day, and I made 172 on that day.
On the day?
Yeah, I think I shrunk as I walked out of there, and when I went to the academy, they looked at me as if something wasn't quite right. But I do tell the story about how the kid that was too short ended up being in charge of the biggest police station in Queensland, and I was there for 8.5 years. Just such a great thing to have to stretch yourself to do those things.
Yeah, we're gonna have this opportunity, folks. That if you feel like it, we're gonna open up the Zoom lines, and you might want to have a chat to Inspector Corey Allen.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think you'll be up for that, won't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you'll be up for that. But before we do, I think in the back of my mind is that you're probably yelling at me because I haven't cheersed the great old man. So cheers.
Rudy.
Here he is. Cheers, Rudy.
Oh, cheers, Rudy.
You'll cheers,
well
Rudy,
done.
too. Yeah. And from one Gerald, he's loving that. From one Gerald to another Gerald, don't forget.
All hail Rudy.
All hail the great man. So, yeah, you had your nice little... Coffee with the cops a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been punching them out here. So now I'm out in the patrol group doing the district inspector stuff. Anytime you can get to talk to people when they're not having grief and have a conversation, and we don't have a lot of that time. Like, we're bloody busy. Apparently, we just had a pandemic, and our calls for service are growing. So anytime you can create an opportunity for someone to just ask a difficult question, and I got smashed down at Barden the other day with some people that were really cranky with stuff that had happened to them, and I said, I want to hear that stuff. Like, we're accountable where we don't get it right. In particular, sometimes people walk up and say thank you, and they really appreciate what we do as well. And there's a lot of that, but we've got to own the times we get it wrong, and giving people a chance to talk to you when they're not on the side of the road, or when they're not having a really bad day is important to me.
Man, I want to bring up an image, and I want you to tell me what this represents. So what's all this about? This bit of graffiti that's here. Show me some respect.
It was. It shows the insightfulness of youth. I did a lot of little projects in the city trying to get frontline coppers to do more crime prevention stuff, because they kind of saw themselves as the responders. So they said, we go and do the jobs and we arrest the people and we write the tickets. So then there was a crime prevention unit. So I said, no, all police can do crime prevention. You don't have to do it all day, every day, but you have a role to play. And part of that is talking to people you don't want to talk to, who you have strife with. So we ran little projects like that, which was an art project. It cost $1,500 and a grant I got. But we sat with street kids who traditionally didn't like us and had good reason to in some cases. The first 2 hours were them telling us their experiences with the police. So it was a bit of rough news for the coppers to sit there and listen to, and they just had to listen to it. And then we spoke about what the relationship should look like going forward in the future. Like what should it look like? And the kids had to submit drawings of art that we would put up in the police station, and that was the one that won, where someone said, the police are always telling us we should respect them because they're just doing their job, but they should respect us because we're actually not out here on the street because we want to be here.
Two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah, it was funny too. If you look at that picture, there's the registered number of a police officer on his badge there.
Okay.
And that copper was walking through the station after the art project was up and everything, and he said, why is my bloody registered number there? But apparently they didn't like him very much. It was just a nice little Australian dig at him to go, oh, yeah, we got your number.
We got your number. We'll put it up. Where is that? Is it still available somewhere?
Yeah, there's that, and they've since done, got legs then, so we did cultural type art as well, and that's up in the Mall Post in Brisbane City, and they've continued it on to expand into Brisbane's culture and the culture of young people changed. So to acknowledge their culture, we did cultural oriented pieces, and they got a lot more money and did some other really good things. But that, doing art together to display something, I didn't really get the impact of it until I saw that piece, and I thought that's actually really impactful and insightful, and it come from young kids, from kids on the street who we don't listen to.
Yeah, you give them a purpose. And they've got something to do.
Give them voice.
Give them a voice.
They were pretty stoked about putting graffiti up at the station too. Yeah. They were like, it's almost like they tagged the station legally.
Yeah. Well, it's not graffiti. I'll call it art.
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah, we can call it art. Throw your headphones on for a second. I've got a clip that I want to play you. And I want you to tell me what this is about. So this happened through, you did a TED talk about 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
I was in the audience.
That's amazing.
I remember.
6 degrees of separation.
Something like that, isn't it? So, do you know Kevin Bacon? Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Not personally.
Let's have a look at this clip here and tell me what this is about.
So I suppose my point is, and the challenge is, if we can make empathy one of the most effective tools in fighting crime, particularly in an organisation where the impression and the expectation might be we're more interested in arrests and tickets and kicking ass and taking names, then what else can we solve with empathy?
I reckon that's a great clip. That is a great clip. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your initiative that you have. I mean, having a coffee with a cop, I think, is a great initiative. And here we're having a waffle with a whiskey.
Yeah. See, back in the 80s, I would have been probably having a whiskey.
Yeah. Well, let's not go back to there. Well, you can. But I'm thinking, why that initiative? Why fighting crime with empathy? Because I know most of your time isn't spent doing that. I mean, I think in here you talked about kicking ass.
Yeah. So and, there's a lot of people that would just rather see us do that. But you just got to look at what sort of people we're dealing with and what's happened and understand their story again. Most of the people we deal with are not crooks. They're people that have got, apparently there was a war on drugs. How'd that go? We didn't seem to win it.
Yeah.
You can't have a war on people that are addicted to drugs because you just criminalise them. There's a lot of people in jail that are just unwell, that have had drug history, that have had trauma history, that have other things. I'm all for good crooks deserve locking up, or people that are doing things that are harmful deserve to be stopped. Like I'm all good about carrying the stick and arresting people. I used to arrest a lot of people and I really enjoyed it. But arresting the right people for the right things and helping people and using your leverage to get people to take help is much more powerful, and it's cheaper, and it's more effective, and it's better supported by the community. Like a copper that can show a bit of discretion about a minor street offence to get someone to take some help or to get someone to listen is earning social capital every time they do it, and they're earning respect. Country coppers get that.
Yeah.
Don't they? They don't piss everyone off in town by writing everybody a ticket every time they can because they know they'll be standing by themselves outside the pub looking for help, and they'll be desperately wanting.
Well, I know you're making a great impact. I mean, we can see all the vision that we see down what's happening in Victoria and New South Wales, and we're glad we're removed from that. And our experience here in Brisbane's been, or not only in Brisbane, but in Queensland's been very different. I remember at the airport one day, and I had to catch a plane. And I had one of the officers come to me and says, "Oh, you're one of those, are you?" And I looked at her and I went, "What do you mean by that? I don't know if I know what that means." She said, "Oh, you're not wearing a mask." And I said, "Oh yeah, I just left mine at home." And she was really polite in the way that she did it. I think her first one was, right, we're seeing 100 of these people coming through.
Yeah.
But she just turned to me and she said, "Hey, would you mind just putting this on? It's kind of like what we have to ask you to do."
Well, she could have written you a ticket.
Sorry?
She could have written you a ticket.
She could have.
But even our commissioner gets it. She said, we're going to approach COVID with compassion first, and we're trying to help people. So we were all on board with, I don't want to be writing people tickets for not wearing a mask, so I'll give them one.
Yeah.
I said, can you just put this on? Or can you just ask a question instead of giving a direction?
It's too much paperwork anyway.
Well, do you really need that drama? And it doesn't really work.
Didn't work, did it?
What's the goal? To get you to put a mask on so that, we're a bit safer and healthier.
And I'll remember her for her compassion and understanding, and not for her, her foot on my, on my head type of thing. So, okay, there might be some people that are looking at this and they're getting their kids to watch this. What's a great skill that a copper needs nowadays?
I just finished a stint as 5 years as the Chief Operational Skills Instructor for all police. So I was in charge of all the tactics and weapons training and all the hands-on training, and it's fantastic. And I come from a tactical background. I love that stuff. But the best skills, talking to people.
Yeah.
You know, if you can talk to someone the right way when shit's going down, when it's a crisis or when they're having the worst day of their life, you know, those people are invaluable. And I do think that's a skill that 10, 11, 12-year-old boys should be taught. You know, like I've got kids in this neighbourhood, you know, they play rugby and they do the other stuff. I wish someone would have some type of structured training for them or induction to them to say a good man can actually stop a fight.
Yeah.
They can stop a fight physically if they have to
Yeah.
too, but a good man can intervene and say, hey buddy, you know, no one wants to fight today. And if they learnt that when they were forming their ideas of masculinity and forming the ideas of what a good strong man should be, I think we'd see a lot less male violence generally in every aspect.
I think everyone needs, it doesn't have to be a father figure, but they need a role model, don't
Well,
they?
they don't listen to the dads. I know.
That's
I've
true.
first-hand experience. I've got a 16-year-old here, and we've had some times. But,
Yeah.
you know, he listens to other men around us, you know, who are influential, even if they might say the bloody same thing that I do.
Yeah.
But that's a really important part. It's actually one of those things they say for kids that have had adverse childhood experiences. If they can have a person who's generally not a parent in their life, you know, a responsible adult that can say, hey, you know, when you do that, you know, and it looks like this, no, I wouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And we've definitely, you know, the kids I see that are in serious trouble, there's nobody telling them that stuff. And they're getting they're getting their social norms off bloody Instagram and
TikTok.
you know, and other crap stuff that encourages them to do the wrong thing.
Poisoning the mind. I love watching some of those YouTube clips, you know, where there'll be a group of young kids and they're playing baseball or, you know, basketball on the street. And an officer will pull up and it's like, oh no, you know, what have we done now?
Oh, and they
there's
come
been
play with them, yeah.
You know, there's been a complaint down the road that the kids are making too much noise. And the copper will walk up and he'll say, so, throw me the ball.
Yeah.
Let's have a go now. Let's play. You know?
I did a little initiative for regional Queensland because I had some friends who were working up in Pomperow and other places, and I asked them, is there anything, you know, city people can do? Because if you've been in some of those remote Indigenous communities, it's bloody hard yards as a copper as well as just to live there. And they said, kids have got nothing. They got no sporting gear. So we passed the hat around and we got a bit of sponsorship, and we ended up sending about a dozen little cricket kits out to them. So it was playing cricket in the street, cricket with coppers out in these country towns. It was really good. You'd never hear about it because it was just these little towns, but coppers out there with, you know, some beach cricket gear and other stuff out in the street playing with kids every now and then was a great icebreaker because the only other time they saw us was when they were at their house for
Correct.
horrible things.
Yeah,
you know?
horrible things. Does pumpkin remind you of anything? A pumpkin?
Yeah.
See, I
well,
listen.
yeah, you have listened to stuff. Yeah, well, that was... Apparently you don't feed pumpkin to my old man.
Okay. Why not?
Yeah,
What was that about?
Oh, I grew up in a home that had a lot of violence. You know, like my dad drank really heavily and my mum pushed his buttons, and there's no excuse for violence, I know. But, you know, there were times in our house where stuff would happen that would be, I don't know, how can you say, could have been avoided. So if Dad had been out and stuff had been going, he'd been out and stayed out, or he'd been drinking, my mum would often do this thing where she'd serve pumpkin to him, and he bloody hated it. And he said, you feed pumpkin to the pigs on our farm, we're not eating that shit. And then we would sit at the table seeing the pumpkin getting put on the plates, and I'd think, why will you do that? And then there were a lot of fights in our house over pumpkin where it got thrown out the back door, sadly, but I still don't like pumpkin for some reason. It just brings up those memories. Not that I ever did.
It's incredible because I'm thinking always that one of the reasons that you got into policing was you thought it might have been cool. I know you were a military person before that.
Yeah.
You said that you weren't very good at it, but you're pretty good at it. You turned up here on time. That would have been horrible.
They instilled that fear into me of punctuality and dress and bearing.
Get here on time. Yelling doesn't work, does it? Do you think,
it's a last resort.
It is a last resort, but you see it a lot. Drop the gun, put the knife down, put the knife down.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't work.
It works to a point.
To a point.
Like if you've got a gun in your hand, you're pointing it at someone and you yell, put the knife down. If they're going to put the knife down, they will, if you yell it out loud a couple of times. But if you've got to say it 43 times, and I watched a video recently where a police officer said it 43 times, I wanted to stab him at the end of it. if it's not working, we teach them to change. Like make a couple of loud verbal commands so people know what you're doing. Yeah. And if it's not working, you know, the skill in it is to be comfortable then in that really risky situation and to be able to do something else. And that could be to take 3 steps back and ask a question. Buddy, what's going on? Yeah. Nobody wants to hurt you. Yeah. You know, can I just ask them? And I saw a great video down at Main Railway Yard there where a young copper from the valley de-escalated this bloke with an axe up against his throat. And he said, mate, can you just please put that down in your side? He said, my name's Bryce. He said, I'm from Fortitude Valley. He said, nobody wants to hurt you. And that could have been done very differently before we started that type of training, because previously it could have been just drop the axe really loudly with police with their weapons pointed at you and the light from the weapon in your face, and it could have escalated it. But that young copper from the valley, I remember we used that video in training now. He just kept his cool. He used his name. He asked old mate his name. So he asked him, please. He said, please, can I just get you to put that down? I'm really worried about that axe. And in about 6 minutes, just doesn't seem like a long time. It's a long time when you're standing there with someone with an axe in their hand. In about 6 minutes, he knew a bit more about that bloke. He asked him about his high-vis shirt and said, oh, you're working around here? And he kept him going till the bloke just put the axe down and we took him out to the hospital. But we didn't have to shoot him.
Yeah, that's so good. And there's a lot of trauma with that too, you know, on both sides.
On all sides,
all the sides, you know. You've got the family members, you've got the community, and you also have the officer themselves, you know, that would go through some tremendous trauma in that one there. So you're really community with a uniform, aren't you? That's what you're up.
Well, you can't be otherwise. And I've worked in other places around the world when I did my Churchill Fellowship, where I got the feeling that police thought themselves as an occupying force, and it was really uncomfortable. You know, San Francisco in particular was one that came to mind. They kind of saw themselves, at least the police I worked with in Tenderloin, a mission station, as, you know, they were patrolling the streets like an occupying force. They weren't part of the community. They didn't really know all the people that I already knew. I'd already worked with homeless services in the area by the time I worked with the police. I knew more homeless services than the local cops did. It was quite surprising, but they had an adversarial relationship and it just wasn't healthy. Like, I don't know how you'd like to work like that. Like, you're part of the community. You're trusted to do things that other people don't do. If you don't accept that, then who are you?
Do you have a goal every day? Like maybe earlier on when you're in your early days of policing, and even now, do you have a goal every day to say, right, I just need to get home today, get home to my family, I need to be able to achieve something? Like, what's your thing that you do that you say, okay, my mindset today is, my goal is not to raise my voice, not to yell, not to intimidate?
I think it's more cumulative than setting little goals every day, because, you know, we've got a lot of little things you can do every day as any police. So there's a lot of free range. So, you know, where I'm pushing my area is that if you're a good local copper at the Gap station, you can virtually be your own master for that day. You and your partner can work out what you want to do, stuff you have to do, stuff, you know, you need to do, and obviously you're called to do things. But if you know your area really well, you can do really effective, creative things as an individual copper driving around in a car with your partner that will give you a lot of purpose. So I get to that place easy because I like to do things that have meaning. I like to do things that have some community, stuff like this. You know, this is most other inspectors don't do this kind of stuff. But I do it because this has purpose to me. Like a lot of people will hear a story about a copper they've never heard before and may think differently. They'll hear other things, and that's got meaning and purpose to me. So if I can do those things regularly, it does make it easier to do the shitty things. So when, you know, I'm sitting behind the computer at 9 o'clock at night doing risk management and files and other crap that comes with the job, this stuff is the stuff that sustains you. So I try to do something that connects me with whatever my purpose is. Yeah. Most days. We've opened up the line, so if you want to have a chat with Inspector Corey Allen, just jump on the line. You know what the deal is. There it is there. You just need to put in that passcode, 476-631-8505. And the passcode, of course, is 666. Of course. You'll be in the waiting room there with myself, the dogs, and good old Rudy in there. So make a call, and Corey will take that call. Sure. You're happy to do that, aren't you? Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah. It's better than talking to people when you pull them over.
Oh, yeah, easy. Yeah. It's easier. Look, I wanted to also, I wanted to bring this up too. This is Rachel Whitford, 4 years to the week. she was a great friend of mine, and she tragically died in an aeroplane crash just in the South Australian outback. And so I wanted to dedicate this to her family,
Absolutely,
and all
yeah.
the people that knew her quite well. She was a great copper. She was a senior sergeant out at Logan. We
Yeah,
had a
very
great
well
connection there.
respected.
She's very well respected. So
Yeah.
Rachel, here's, I don't
Yeah,
have my
God
whiskey
bless
on
you,
you,
thank
but
you.
I'm going to have my water. And thanks very much for your service. It was great needed, and the 5 kids there would be missing you terribly. So don't forget those lines are open there. Now, I've got a question for you. You had just recently, I think, I don't know how long ago, but recently you were on Real Crime with, was it Adam Shand?
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
I actually think Adam's a friend of mine now because I was at a conference, law enforcement and public health conference in Melbourne. It was the very first one. It was quite a long time ago, and I gave a talk there about how connecting police with a different way of dealing with vulnerable and homeless people actually helped us reduce crime generally. He did a story on me down there in Melbourne. So he was working at the Australian at the time, and it was another reminder that, you know, the press is difficult to deal with at best. And he was really positive, and we spent hours talking, and he sent a photographer up to Brisbane, and it was a really positive, proactive story about cops helping homeless people, and he couldn't get it published.
Oh.
And he said, the editor of the Australian wasn't really interested in good news stories about police at the time because, you know, he had a history with the police. He'd been the editor of the Courier Mail here in Brisbane back in the old days. And he said, I can't get it published, so he just put it up on his blog. And we've stayed in touch ever since for different things.
But
so it was nice. Yeah,
you got slammed for that, or you got some flack for doing that story because I don't know, you opened up your life a little bit too.
It's just not a thing police are comfortable with generally, and you know, the police dealings with the media, you know, they can be difficult. Like you don't always get the right message across, but I don't know that I am a good communicator. I like it. There's no, and we've got all this accessibility now. If people aren't hearing the good things about us, well, I know what they're hearing. They're hearing the shitty things when we get it wrong, because we get it wrong a lot. Yeah. We make a lot of mistakes. They're serious and important. But, you know, there's over 10 million interactions with police in Queensland every year.
Wow.
Very, very few of those go wrong. Yeah. Very, very few of those result in use of force. And when we do use force and we do make those decisions, we do a bloody fantastic job. But when you hear a bad thing, you'll remember it. And I'll give you this example. I was at one of those barbecues you're talking about where people ask you questions, and there was a dad from school who I'd known for 6 or 7 years. Our kids had been going to the same school and we were going to the same functions, and he always gave me the cold shoulder. You could tell he just didn't want to talk to me, so I thought, bugger you, I'm going to say hello. I went up and I said, how you going? I said, we've known each other for ages now, never really had a chat or anything. He goes, yeah, I don't like police. I said, neither do I, mate. He said, what do you mean? I said, some police are arseholes. He went, oh, really? I said, yeah. I said, I think I was probably a little arsehole when I was a young copper. I was a bit rough around the edges. And he said, I said, tell me why you don't like police. He said, when I was a young bloke, he said, at the Newmarket McDonald's, I'd been to a concert. I was a long-haired sort of git. And he said, and I walked in. I must have looked at the police wrong, and a couple followed me into the toilets, and, you know, one of them pushed me and said, what are you looking at? And gave me a hard time. He said, and I've never liked police since. I said, well, how long was that? He goes, probably 30 years ago. I said, so 30 years on, that's the thing you remember.
Yeah.
I said, so you just, you know, we have changed.
Yeah, that's a lot of
we have grown up a bit. But that if something bad happens to you, you remember it. And it's, you know, we're programmed to remember bad things to survive. So I like communicating, because when people hear the good things and people hear someone being honest and open about that stuff, hopefully it undoes some of those negative things.
Yeah, it's incredible when you get to the point where you get that person that you might be talking about, and I see that person maybe being a little bit insecure in themselves, you know. But what you're showing there is that you've got great emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
and
sometimes.
You've got sometimes, yeah. Well, even here today, I mean, like you say, a lot of inspectors or a lot of coppers wouldn't just turn up and just sit in the seat there because they think this is a gotcha moment. You know, I'm going to get you. I'm going to talk about something. But I think the art of opening up conversation is really important, and you show great emotional intelligence. You show great self-regulation and self-awareness, and I think that
I wasn't always like that.
Yeah,
I was pretty arrest focused as a young tactical copper, and I was all about, you know, you need to say the right words because I just want to arrest you. And we were well trained and very physical, so, you know, if it got into a stoush, you know, I'm part of the largest armed gang in Queensland. So we'll win every fight. But it took a long time for me to realise that, arresting everyone wasn't working. And certainly, I don't know how many people I arrested who I didn't even listen to. And when I recorded myself and listened back, that's when I thought, oh, I'm actually not listening. What are the elements of the offence? I'm being a bit of a dick. I never swore at people. It was rude. I was always procedurally very correct, and I never lost anything in court. But did that person leave better than when I spoke to them? Probably not. But I made a lot of arrests, got a lot of overtime.
Oh, they would have loved that.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the reward cycle back then, a great night, you locked up, 30 people. Yeah. We had one night down at Schoolies there, between 10 of us, we locked up 111 people. And it was no quarter, and it worked because people were, behaviour changed, but I just wonder, the approach they have now to Schoolies is a great example. Now, we don't over-police it. We entertain, people are entertained, and we minimise the harm, and police engage early with people and take a photo. It's changed so much. They flat out arresting 30 people a night for the whole Schoolies.
Do you want to whack your headphones on?
Yeah, great idea.
I think we got a call coming through. It takes about 15, 20 seconds for the line to connect. Oh no, he's jumped off. Have you jumped off, Bill? I saw you on there a second ago. Don't worry, we'll take our headphones off. If you want to call again, Bill, we're here to listen to you if you've got something that you want to say. Yeah, policing nowadays, I think. Are we getting better at it? You must have been one of those guys that says, okay, I've got this program that I want to implement. And the program is I want to be able to speak to people, have a conversation with a person, and I want to be able to engage with that person. Would they have looked at you and gone, oh, God, Corey's lost it?
I had a couple of particular people I won't name. One was a detective inspector who would sit in meetings and he'd tap his pen whenever I talked, and he'd be tapping away, and you could see him getting angry, and he'd go, we're not here to do that, we're not here to do that, what are you doing with this, helping the homeless stuff and that sort of stuff, what are you doing about the crime? And I was quite worried, particularly when I was first at the city. I had a really good inspector that was my boss, and he said, you're just going to have to do this thing as a side project, because and you've got to keep an eye on the crime. What are the crime stats doing? What are everything else doing? And they, fortunately, crime did come down because of all that time we were spending not helping homeless people and not helping young kids. We could reinvest in actually being proactive with the crime and being at pubs before things happen instead of chasing our tail or getting stuck in the watch house. Like, to arrest a drunken bloke who's homeless, who's not well, takes hours.
Yeah.
And they might end up passing away in a cell.
True.
But to call someone like we were doing, calling micro projects, they'd come along and you'd say, I've got old mate here, he's having a really bad day. I don't want to have to take him to the watch house for something so minor, but surely you could help him. And using that leverage in the conversation just helped us, and then we were out of there in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And old mate was getting helped, which the police thought, oh, that's better than putting him in the watch house and having to fight him and, potentially him being unwell. And all that time we reinvested in actually doing proactive crime stuff, and then coppers became better communicators, because if you can sit and talk to a homeless person and ask them about their life, you can pretty much talk to anybody. It was interesting.
Throw those wonderful headphones on. Yeah. We'll see if we can go a second chance there with Bill. G'day, Bill. How you going? Are you there?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Gotcha.
What would you like to ask, mate?
I would just like to say that your constable there is very outspoken.
Inspector.
I really love everything.
Inspector.
We all hold the office of constable.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, go on. Sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. It's okay. I wanted to say that I've been very fortunate in my life to experience really good interactions with police all the time in my whole life. I've been lucky that way. And I see all of the stuff that's pushed constantly on YouTube and the media. And I would just like to know from you, when you see these things that are shown, especially little things, well, they're not little, but things that are taken out of context. Like at the border, I'm sure that you've seen it, at the border in the United States, there was a police officer on a horse. And he was using his reins to move the horse around, and it looked like he was whipping the people that were trying to get across the border.
Yeah,
How does that make you feel? I mean, like, it's even the photographer said no, that didn't happen, and they're still trying to prosecute or at least persecute these police officers that are trying to protect our border. I have a few follow-up questions too.
Sure. Well, the first thing I always think is you can't watch a game of baseball through a straw. So that's kind of what, like, some of those snapshots are like when you see a small piece of video out of context. So you've got to be careful about watching them because, you know, what happened before, what happened after, what's happening from a different angle, because the truth looks different from every angle. And I'll be up front, you know, we create our own reality TV show with the body-worn cameras we wear, and some of it's not good, you know, sometimes we get it wrong, but it's a human business. I do get disappointed, though, that they amplify the bad things, even, you know, turn things that look bad to make them look worse so that people can be more popular or get more hits. You know, bad news sells. That's just a sad fact of life.
Yeah, it's about the clicks, isn't it? It's how many clicks we can get onto that and make that video go viral.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, before you know it, that and the cycle and the speed of things means it's very hard to undo that. Even if the video was completely wrong and out of context, so many people would have watched that and seen nothing else. And they go, yeah, that reinforces what I think about police because that's the dominant message I'm getting. That's why, you know, this human contact like this, you know, where you talk to a copper and you get to know police otherwise. And thankfully, you've had those good interactions and they probably affect you more. But if all you see are the bad things, that's all you think is happening.
That's it. You focus on what you look at all the time, isn't it?
We're primarily tuned to pay attention to those bad things too, because if you go back to how the mind works, that we remember bad things because that's how we survive. We don't want to get eaten by the T-Rex and that stuff.
Yeah,
so our brain's programmed to go, well, you know, remember that because that was really bad. And it triggers something in our brain that stores it away in a different spot. So it takes at least 10 good things to undo that one bad thing.
And Bill, you said you had a follow-up question?
I did. So when you establish that there is a bloke that's within your police station or under your ranks that is not good, how long does it take for you to decide this guy shouldn't be a police officer anymore, or this young woman or woman? Because it seems like here in the States, they have forever. Like their unions will stand behind them, and sometimes it becomes a problem. I live in a very small community, a small city that is apart from the main city that I live in. I live near San Diego, but we have our own police station. We have we're a city to ourselves, so we're not part of San Diego. And all of the police in La Mesa, where I live, are, what's the word I'm looking for? They're reviewed very, very hard before they can get a job there. And just one little mistake can blow up in everybody's face. And I'm sure that you've never heard of it, but we had riots here about a police officer questioning a young African-American guy, and they wound up burning down Black Lives Matter. They had a protest. They burnt down my bank. They burnt down another bank. They burnt down a whole bunch of stuff. And it was because this one fella didn't feel comfortable with the guy standing at the train station, and there was an argument about a cigarette. I don't know. But how long...
Mate, are you asking about how long it takes for disciplinary action to remove the officer? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have the same protection from civil liability here in Australia that there is for police in America. So, you know, that at the higher end of things, when police commit misconduct and they commit criminal matters, it's quite an easy process to exit them. But in the short term, we have really good processes about trying to change their behaviour early. So we do things like sitting with people and watching their body-worn video and doing a review of it together, like a coaching conversation. We accept that people are not going to get things right all the time and they're going to make mistakes. But if you make the same mistake after those coaching conversations and after those performance improvement plans and after things, then, it can go to demotion, then it can go to, getting fines, monetary fines. It can go to regulated transfers, and at the higher end, police do get dismissed. It's a long road for a police officer to be dismissed, but to me, every time I get a complaint, and it doesn't happen often in this area, thankfully, but when you do get a complaint, it's an opportunity to change that copper's behaviour with a conversation.
That's so good.
Yeah, you sit there with them and you put their own body on video. It's really, it's like me when I was recording myself. When I heard myself back, I thought, the penny dropped. So when you sit with someone, you watch their body on video and you pause it and you say, what was your decision making there? Why did you choose to do that at that point? If the penny's going to drop, it's going to drop there. If it's not going to drop, then at least you've had the conversation and they know what's right and wrong. And you can tell them, you might not see that, you might not agree with it, but I'm telling you not to do that again.
Yeah.
And that's super effective. Yeah.
I think one of the important things also is that every officer is their own Truman Show. That's
the way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, that camera, I love the cameras because most of the time, or almost all the time, it records exactly what happens. There's no argument. Police didn't make things up. Police didn't fabricate things. And when they were introduced, they said, it's going to change so much. And it really didn't change that much. I remember getting the fella into Valley Station who made a complaint about the police, and he was adamant that all these terrible things had happened. I said, just come in, sit with me, and we'll look at it together. And he said, no, you'll be destroying the video, and you'll be hiding this, and you'll be doing that. I said, mate, come on in, and we'll watch it together. And it wasn't very flattering for him. It completely supported the police, and I said, you're lucky you didn't get arrested that night. I said, I would have arrested you looking at what you're doing here. And he left there with his tail between his legs. So video was the truth of the matter.
Bill, did that help you out, answer your question a little bit?
Actually, it did, very much so.
Yeah.
And I would like to say thank you for coming on. It takes a lot of guts. Not a lot of people in your position would come on to a little show like this.
Yeah,
and I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot.
I work for people in my community first. That's if we can start with that premise, then the rest of it is a little bit easier.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bill. You're always welcome here, mate.
I also like to say I appreciate the work that you do. It's a hard job.
Thank you. Yeah.
By far. And
are you talking about Corey or are you talking about me?
Yeah, your job's really hard. He makes a good cup of coffee.
Yeah, make a good cup of coffee. Thanks, mate. I'm sure you appreciate that.
I do, thank you.
You guys have a great
Thanks,
great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I think it's really important. I think, when you get a person that calls in, and our system here in Australia is very different, to what happens in the States.
Oh, yeah, the climate's
UK.
different too. I worked with cops in Santa Monica, in San Francisco, and Seattle, and St. Paul when I did that Churchill Fellowship, and I left very grateful that, we're operating in a different risk environment, It's volatile and difficult, and the police are always on edge and worried about. They just assume that, there's a good chance that someone will have a gun every time you're talking to them, and our culture is different in that way, and I'm grateful for that. But
yeah, I had an ex-US Marine fighter pilot on here yesterday.
I'm going to have to go and watch that one.
You might have to watch that. His handle is Spook. And g'day, Spook, how you going? I noticed you haven't donated today, mate, so I'm waiting for my $1, if you wouldn't mind doing that. He always kicks me $1. It's a crazy thing.
US dollar,
yeah. But he talked about, I asked him about, what's the future of flying? And one of the things we know, it's all going to be automated. Everything's going to be drone kind of.
A pilot is the biggest hindrance to the performance of an aircraft.
Wow, there you go. What's the future of policing?
I think we're actually going to go back. So,
how do you mean?
Well, we are very reliant on technology. Everyone's telling us, this technology is going to do this, and it certainly helps grease the wheels of stuff. But we were talking earlier about you can make an online crime report, and we can satisfy all the functions of an online crime report and make an investigation and do fantastic things with the technology and the ease of reporting and all the rest of it, but it's a human business. So if we really want to make people feel safe and be safe in a community, they need contact with a human. if you really want to go to a domestic violence instance and make a difference in those people's lives and reduce the harm for those kids, like someone could have done for me when I was a kid, it takes a human to do that. The technology will help, like recording things well and reporting things and having the intel to do things. We've got some really good systems that connect our intelligence and help us point the right direction. But there's not going to be a drone show up at your house and help you resolve the domestic violence incident. It's going to be people. And people like that are getting to be in short supply. People that can have a conversation, people are prepared to work shitty shifts and do, and carry all the stuff that we got to carry and run towards things that are sometimes not very nice, be deployed. I had a couple of months at the airport for COVID, running the airport response to COVID, on top of doing my own job, people that were prepared to do that stuff. There's not a great pool of them in the community anymore.
Yeah. I'm noticing that there's there's a lot of recruitment drives happening for policing. And I think what has just come out in the last month or so, I think it's now, the application age is now 17 years of age.
Well, we always used to do that with cadets. Like we take cadets in and they do an 18-month program. And as much as we can say, I'm 36 years in this year, so as much as we can say that, you need an older head on your shoulders, and where do they get the life experience? We ask 18-year-olds to go to war and make decisions about those things. I think with the right amount of coaching, and if we put them with the right mentors, like I was only 19 and a half, 20 when I joined, so I had some life experience, obviously, but I think we can give that life experience to young people and open it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
As long as they're paired with the right people and they get the right experiences early.
Yeah, good mentorship's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like get with the right person and get the person to show them the right way, not the ways that you
It's like an apprenticeship, you go with a good tradesperson, and you might learn something at TAFE college, but you learn how to be a tradesman by working on the building site with someone else who's showing you how to do things, how to live your life in some ways.
And it's funny when you say that, like some of the greatest skills every tradesman has is turning up on time, being able to hold a good conversation.
Yeah.
Be polite.
Let me know when you find a tradie that can do that these days, but anyway.
Yeah, it's getting harder, and a lot of construction industries are closing down. I think
they can't get, kids to get into that business, and it's, it's probably, I won't go down that track, but it's probably better than going to uni in some cases, having a trade and having a business.
Do you think some members of the public are a little bit disillusioned with policing? Maybe what's not so much here in Queensland, but what's happened over the last 2 years, and they're finding it hard to recruit. I know Western Australia's having a hell of a time trying to find good recruits to come in. What do you think's what's the barrier? What's holding people back?
Well, it's a really strong employment market. There's a lot of jobs out there at the moment, so we're competing with other jobs that pay just as much and have similar conditions but don't have the risk involved. There's not a bottomless pit of people that want to do this type of work. You've got to be sort of geared for it and have the right sort of personality that wants to be the person who runs the other way towards danger and towards those sort of things. And we do battle the public impression of what policing is. That one or two bad things that happens to someone that taints your view of what police are and who they are.
True, so, like your mate, yeah.
I enjoy upsetting that when, I arrested a couple of kids the other night that were going past Indooroopilly station smashing things with baseball bats, and I stupidly ran out at 6 o'clock at night by myself with no gear and grabbed a couple of them, and I got real police, my local real police to help me. And the kids were really badly behaving, if you want to put it best. They had a knife, they had a balaclava in their bum bag, they were obviously up to no good, and I certainly could have been firm and direct and all the rest of the things with him, but I just started to talk to one of them who was being the main troublemaker, and I just asked him about himself, and he was having a go at me, and I didn't react to it. And after 10 minutes, he said, I'll talk to you because you seem all right, you're cool, but these other police, they're this. And I thought, well, being comfortable having that sort of conversation with a young person is not something that everyone can do.
Yeah, a great skill to have also that I find is to not react but respond. Have the ability to respond. And I love that word, responsibility. We all have a responsibility. It's the ability to be able to respond to a person and not react. And
you own that. That's yours. Don't let someone take it away from you by thinking, they made me say that. Yeah. Say, well, no, you own what comes out of your mouth.
Yeah. And I love there's a thing I used to use is above and below the line behaviour, which above the line behaviour is ownership, accountability, responsibility. Below the line behaviour is all that blame, excuses and denial. And we can find a lot of that, in normal conversation. So I guess with, with the way that conversations are happening, I'm just loving the way that that you're one of those officers who will go out there and open up conversation. There's a great sales technique. What was that sales technique? I don't know who said it, but he said, rather than closing the sale, how about we open up the conversation? And we're always intent on finishing off the business. We want to get that business done and we want to move on to the next one. Well, maybe we'd need to slow down a little bit and just open up the conversation and have build rapport. I think that's a great skill to have too.
Yeah, well, I always say if you can get someone to say thank you when you've written them a ticket, you've done it the right way.
That's good.
So,
yeah.
And I remember specifically writing a ticket for this lady, and she had it in her hand, and she looked at me and she said, "I don't know why I'm thanking you, but I feel like I should. But you've just given me a ticket." And it's because I introduced myself. I explained what I was doing. I wasn't giving her a lecture. I said, this is really important to us. You're in a zone where we've had some serious accidents, and speeding was the number one thing that caused them. So that's why I'm writing it. I understand this would be difficult for you because it's not nice being pulled up by the police. So thank you for being polite. And she got a ticket in her hand and she looked at me and she said, "I'm really confused because I want to say thank you, but you've just written me a ticket."
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it? Yeah. Everyone has a nickname. I mean, my nickname and my handle on here is G-Mann. G'day, everyone. You got Spook, who was here yesterday. Did you have one? You got a nickname?
I probably got two that I'll talk to. One, when I was in the riot squad and the special weapons team, I was called Mendi, which is a Mendi, M-E-N-D-I, which is like a tribe of Papua New Guinea people. There's a culture up there who are small, angry people that everyone's quite scared of. So that was my call sign there. And oddly, one that my niece gave me, which was, it's going to sound a bit funny now, but CCB, Corkor Bear. She couldn't say my name properly, so she used to call me Corkor instead of Corey. And I gave her a teddy bear. So everyone who, even coppers that know me, they go, "Hey, Corkor Bear." And I'm like, "Oh, you know my nickname, that's right." Yeah. So
not embarrassing.
Yes, not exactly the most masculine. It's not, Ghost or Slider or whatever. I'm not a fighter pilot. But
Ghost Spider.
Yeah.
It's funny when I spoke to my father, Rudy, the great legend himself, and I said to him, "I've got Inspector Corey Allen coming on." He said to me, he said, "Oh, wow." He said, "I like him." I said, do you know him? And he said, "Yeah, he's a good actor from, Rebel Without a Cause." I don't know why he sounds Russian now, but yeah. So there's a Corey Allen who's a great actor.
Yeah, there's and a director. He directed some of NYPD Blue too. It's one of my favourite shows.
Okay, yeah.
I looked him up.
And there's also there's an NFL Corey Allen.
Yeah,
and
there's
a rugby player Corey Allen.
Yeah, there's a few.
So, which one do you liken yourself? No, probably not. And you're also known as one of the Three Stooges. Just fill me in on that.
Yeah, well,
how did that happen?
The negotiators. So when I went from the city to the academy and I took over some of the training pieces, these two negotiators came into my office, and Tony Montgomery Clark and Peter Heck, they're two of the best negotiators in Australia, if not the world. And I just said to them, "I don't know why you're here, but just tell me what you want, because pretty much you'll get me to do it anyway." So they said, "Oh, we want to make you one of the Three Stooges because we see the things you did in the city with homeless and vulnerable people." What you don't realise is that maps directly to how police negotiation training works. That, you listen to people, you show respect, you show empathy, you build rapport, and then you influence what happens next. He said that's exactly how we teach police negotiations, but we want to make that the way all police are taught how to communicate. So we formed this little secret cabal where we tried to get into the minds of every other influential training area. So we went to recruit training and influenced that inspector to change all the recruit communication training so that it was delivered by police negotiators using that framework. We went to the first year constable section, so when they're doing like their apprenticeship on the road, they get assessed on how they communicate, not only how they do the job or how they write the process or fill out a form or do all those things, but they get assessed, well, did you actually do that using these techniques in this way that showed respect and that listened to people and did that. Then when I took over the operational skills side of things, I introduced that as the critical skill for police. So communication was moved to the middle of the use of force model to say, well, if you can communicate all the time in this way, in crisis, even when you're using a technique or got hold of someone, there's a good chance that you will resolve it using less force than in a better way. And that's been transformational the last 5 years, just getting that into scenarios where police will confront something like a person with a knife, and they'll have to use their communication skill instead of using their trigger skills, you know, to make it equivalent to your skill using a firearm or a taser. Was really, really important to me, because I knew that the people we were dealing with mostly were people in mental health crisis who had a terrible day, and we were at the front of their house with a knife, and we were the people they called because no one else is available, and we bring a Glock.
Yeah.
So we should at least bring some communication skills as well to go, well, I actually don't want to have to shoot.
Yeah.
Because success for us is not putting shots on target. It's using no force and getting that person help.
Yeah, and I love that you know, one of the greatest things that you have is, we know we've got a lot of that armoury around the, you know, below the belt line around here, but we never go above up here and use the ears that we have and the mouth that we have to listen to a person, to listen to them intently. Because I think that's also the skill too, is to be able to build that rapport and listen to them. Because I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that, you know, even when you get a caller in, or if I'm listening to you, is that, you know, what's the person talking about? You know, make sense of what they're talking about, and then you can understand that this chatting that we're having is going to get them further than, you know, brushing them off or hurrying them up or writing tickets out. And I think that's a great skill, and you show that tremendously here, and
thank you.
And I'm sure all of your colleagues are doing exactly the same.
It's hard for coppers because they go to things that are the same sometimes, and they'll think, I know where this is going. I've probably heard your excuse for speeding before many times, but, you know, we are a service. We should listen, even if we've heard it before, and give someone the dignity of that, even if it still ends up in the same place. We shouldn't shortcut that and just go straight there and say, I'm just writing you the ticket, walking off, or I'm just doing a process, because it's just a bit of bloody dignity and human respect if you just listen, even if you have heard it before.
Are you happy that Queensland won the State of Origin?
I worked 8 years as a sergeant in the riot squad and the public safety response team, and I love State of Origin because it was a big night for us. We used to stand down the bottom of the hill at Lang Park, where they sold, you know, 15,000 tickets for 10,000 seats, and you know, it was fight night for us there as people threw stuff at us and did things. And to be honest, I never watched a game because I was always facing the other way. So it was great to see you know, an exciting game of rugby and people getting out and about in the community again.
Yeah. There's one thing I forgot in this whole thing here, is that normally the reason that people watch this is because they want to know who was first. And I still have, there we go, Quite Gone Jim has said the first word of the day is, so apparently we have to put that word into a sentence. I'm going to hand that over to you, and then we'll slowly start to wrap this up. But
I've got a good one for this.
Oh, you do?
You know, every time I've had to do something and I felt like it was a bit out there, I thought, well, you got to risk it to get the biscuit.
There you go. See, why don't you come up with a harder word? You give me all these other big words.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, mate, it's great having you on here, and you're doing fantastic work. And I don't think there's enough officers out there that are embracing, you know, the way that you're handling, you know, the interactions between people.
Oh, there's plenty of coppers doing it.
Yeah.
And particularly, you know, we talk about Queensland's a massive piece of dirt. Sure. There's people out in remote communities every day, particularly in some of those really desperate communities, doing exactly this. It's just that you won't hear about it.
No.
Because when you hear about it when we get it wrong, you know, when we get it wrong quite a lot, and we own that stuff. But, you know, on the other side of things, there's someone today that a police officer's gone to their house and a shitty thing's been happening and they've helped them. And that's happening time and time again.
Well, mate, the thing that we end up with always is that I want to throw your headphones on, because there's a last word that you have in your TEDx talk that I just want to play. And I'll leave the last word to you. Sorry?
I haven't watched this TEDx talk for a while.
Well,
we're up to about 5 views now, thanks.
5 years, yeah, thanks. We'll get a much younger person. Here we go.
So, with that in mind, it's very hard to argue with the interconnected nature of human contact and the basic belief that we're all equal in principle, and if not, we should be partly responsible for each other.
There's powerful words there. If not, we're partly responsible for each other.
Yeah.
What a great way to end this. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. And don't forget, you can leave your comments below. And I'm sure if I can get Inspector Corey Allen to come on here again. We can maybe do this with a whiskey next time on my terms rather than coffee with a cup. We can do waffle with a whiskey.
Yeah,
if that's
I'll
okay.
make it after my shift's done.
We'll do that.
I'll get a day off.
Yeah, we'll do it. Throw your headphones on because we're going to just show all the people who are going to leave some final comments here. If you wouldn't mind just cheersing the great man and thanking Corey for coming on here today. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That's good. Creamer, yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and thank you, Cha Cha. Thanks for the setting. Inspector, the hot seat, Corey. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.